I wanted to use this video to give you guys some insight into the Midicake ARP project. With the first production units coming soon, it's a chance to talk about some of the key changes and improvements you can expect. I thought it'd be interesting to walk through the development journey, take a look at some of the prototypes to show how it evolved and see the upcoming changes in context. Midicake ARP began about 18 months ago after I was looking for a standalone hardware arpeggiator, and I couldn't find anything on the market that fitted my vision. I wanted something to sit alongside my existing sequencers and do its thing with little intervention during a performance, so I figured it might be fun to make my own. Being a programmer, I started with a software proof of concept. This was a simple thrown together application that had only the key elements, but it gave me the chance to explore layouts and interactions that are still evident in the final version, though some ideas like shift and hold went by the wayside. Most arpeggiators have a small number of simple and fixed patterns that are driven by one or more incoming notes. Fundamental to the idea behind Midicake ARP, however, is the separation of those individual parameters that define a sequence, the number of steps, repeats, the direction of travel through the sequence, and also the concept of bouncing back and forth through the sequence in different ways. The POC was enough to convince me that the idea I had was going to make something really interesting. So then it was time to start on a physical device. Being pretty new to electronics, making this on strip board seemed sensible, but little did I appreciate the complexity of the wiring. Version 1 was a massive learning curve, but a lot of fun figuring it out and putting it together. When starting out on a project like this, you often don't appreciate the amount of learning needed and the time you'll have to spend. That's why you should always stick to your passions, because it keeps it fun even when things get difficult. I learned so much from this prototype in terms of the electronics and components, but as you can see, the layout hasn't really changed much between this and the new versions. That was down to experimenting with layouts on paper before committing to the design. Version 2 was used for alpha testing and was flexible enough to continue the firmware development. I thought carefully about how to create a design that would be flexible and for additional features to be added later. The case is 3D printed, and a vinyl sticker is used for the graphics, and it's got a bigger screen. The case design concept was born of trying to keep the construction simple while also having a distinct style that was easily recognisable as a Midicake design. This version also incorporated a proper PCB and MIDI DIN ports on the back, but a mistake I made with the PCB layout left me having to make this horrendous hacky fix. Version 3 was developed for beta testing, and as well as fixing some of the issues with the internals, incorporated 4 additional rotary controls and a slimmer case thanks to the 3.5mm jack sockets for the MIDI ports. The rotary controls are used for macros and can be assigned to any ARP setting, allowing quick creative tweaks to individual parameters during a performance without having to go into set mode. The 3.5mm sockets, however, just proved too fragile. Even with the higher spec sockets, I had issues, and I took the decision to go back to DINs. So what can you expect from version 4 after 18 months of learning, testing and tweaking? The big news is the buttons. I spent months trying to find a practical solution with a built-in LED indicator and a quality feel good enough to market. The problem I found was finding good components at a reasonable price. The electronics industry has a huge demand problem right now, and prices have skyrocketed. So I've taken a leap of faith and invested in tooling for custom silicone buttons. These won't be clicky, but they should have a good tactile response. And they'll also have integrated RGB LEDs, so expect a more colourful experience. The case is all metal and is about 4mm taller than version 3, allowing room for the MIDI DIN sockets. The graphics have been toned down to compensate for all the coloured LEDs. The screen is a little wider too, mainly to prevent the need to truncate those long scale names. And on that topic, the dedicated scale button is no more. There'll now be 8 chord buttons, all allowing a custom chord to be created or a predefined chord or scale to be selected. There's more memory too, allowing for 16 banks of 12 patches. On the back of the case there are 100mm VESA mounting ports. There are also plans for an angled stand to be made available at a later date. Functionally, I've recently added support for control change and program change MIDI messages, 2 modulators per ARP that allow you to modulate pretty much any setting. There are now editable rhythm and groove patterns, a humanize effect, an increased range of time divisions enabling longer intervals, and more bounce patterns too. There are more ideas in the pipeline too that will be delivered as future firmware updates, such as additional effects and internal sequence programming. And I think that brings us up to date. With a fair win, the first units will be available to market in early summer 2022, and I cannot promise anything in terms of price until production costs are finalised, but I'm aiming to sell for around £250. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you'd like to get in touch you can message me via the Midicake Facebook page or using the details on midicake.com. I'll post some more videos in due course and watch this space for the latest updates. Thanks for watching.